Welcome to this explainer on Werner Heisenberg. Today we're diving straight into an absolutely fascinating story. We're looking at how a brilliant German physicist, a guy who literally redefined the nature of physical reality, also became one of history's most baffling moral puzzles. If you want to understand the actual foundation of our modern world and the immense ethical weight that comes with scientific discovery, well, you are definitely in the right place. Okay, let's kick things off with this foundational quote. What we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning. Think about that for a second. That single sentence captures the entire epistemology of quantum mechanics. You see, before Heisenberg, science kind of just assumed we were passive spectators, just watching the universe tick along. But Heisenberg realized something mind-blowing. Human observation fundamentally alters reality. We are active participants. Just by asking a question of nature, we actually change the answer we get. That realization brings us to a really profound contradiction, and it basically sets the stage for our whole explainer today. How exactly did the man who unlocked the universe's greatest mysteries become one of history's most unresolved moral puzzles? Because get this, the exact same Nobel laureate who revolutionized our entire understanding of existence ended up running the nuclear weapons program for the Third Reich during World War II. It's a massive, glaring paradox, and to unravel it, we really need to start at the beginning. So let's get right into Section 1, Shattering the Classical Universe, from Munich to Matrix Mechanics. Imagine growing up in the incredibly chaotic aftermath of World War I. The young Heisenberg was caught right between absolute ideals and an unpredictable reality. His early life in Munich was totally steeped in classical Greek humanism, thanks to his professor father. But as a fiery, combative teenager, he actually ended up joining the right-wing Freikorps. And that intense, chaotic tension, it perfectly mirrored the massive scientific leap he was about to make. At the time, the classical universe, the one handed down by Isaac Newton, was viewed as deterministic, predictable, objective. It was like a giant ticking clockwork. But Heisenberg essentially took a sledgehammer to that comforting model. He completely replaced it with the quantum universe, a reality ruled by probability, uncertainty, and relational dynamics. He figured out that to make real progress, he literally had to abandon those comforting, visualizable models of the past and just trust the raw, abstract math. So how did he actually pull this off? Honestly, the human element behind this massive leap is just wild. In the spring of 1925, Heisenberg is just 23 years old, and he gets hit with a debilitating attack of hay fever. We're talking so bad, his face swelled up and his landlady thought he'd been in a fist fight. To escape all the pollen, he retreats to the barren, completely rocky island of Helgoland in the North Sea. Total isolation. Stripped of absolutely all distractions, his mind just goes into overdrive. And right there, in that isolation, he has a massive mathematical epiphany. He authors the very first logically consistent, mathematically rigorous formulation of quantum theory. And just like that, matrix mechanics is born. Let's jump ahead to 1927 and see how this all builds into his most famous contribution to science. Section 2, The Rule of Uncertainty, The Limits of Observation. You've probably heard of this one, the uncertainty principle. It's the law that changed physics forever. It basically states that it is fundamentally impossible to simultaneously know both the exact position and the exact momentum of a subatomic particle. By measuring one, you inherently disturb the other. Now, here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. This wasn't just a matter of our microscopes not being powerful enough. Heisenberg mathematically proved that this was a hardwired physical impossibility built right into the architecture of the universe itself. Absolute deterministic control? He showed it was just a total mirage. 1932. Because of these completely mind-bending discoveries that essentially rewrote the rules of reality, Heisenberg is awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics. And he gets it at an astonishingly young age, instantly taking his seat as a true titan of science, right alongside legends like Albert Einstein and Niels Bohr. But, as we're about to see, being a genius in a laboratory definitely does not mean you have moral clarity in the real world. Section 3, Science Under the Regime, The Iran Project and Moral Compromise. Things take a very dark turn in 1933 with the rise of the Nazi Party. While brilliant Jewish colleagues like Einstein and Max Born fled Germany to save their lives, Heisenberg, well, he made a choice. He controversially decided to stay in Germany. His justification was that he needed to preserve traditional German science for after the war. But that specific decision led him directly to the Iran Project, Germany's World War II nuclear weapons program. Eventually, he was drafted by Army Ordnance to serve as the chief scientific asset for the regime. He literally placed his world-altering intellect right into the hands of a terrifying totalitarian state. And this, right here, is the absolute crux of the historical debate around him. Now, because he ultimately failed to actually build the atomic bomb, historians are still fiercely debating two very different narratives about his wartime actions. On one side, you have what's called the saboteur theory. Writers like Robert Jungk champion this idea, suggesting Heisenberg was actually a subtle resistor who intentionally dragged his feet to make sure Hitler never got the bomb. But then, on the flip side, you have the incompetence theory, which was heavily argued by his former colleague Samuel Goldsmith. This theory claims Heisenberg didn't sabotage anything, he just failed due to severe technical miscalculations and a lack of wartime resources. And that view is really strongly supported by secret transcripts the Allies recorded at Farm Hall, where Heisenberg and other German scientists were held right after the war. It's a debate that is still raging today. In physics, Heisenberg proposed this concept called the Heisenberg cut. It's basically the arbitrary boundary between quantum probability and classical reality. But honestly, we can use his own philosophical concept as a perfect metaphor for his blurry moral boundaries during the war. I mean, where exactly do you draw the line between just doing the math and being ethically responsible for the weapon that math builds? His life proves pretty clearly that intellectual brilliance does not insulate anyone from moral culpability. Neutrality, when you're faced with tyranny, is usually just an illusion. So, what happened after all of this? Let's look at Section 4, A Divided Legacy, Post-War Reconstruction and Modern Impact. Returning to a completely devastated Germany after his captivity in England, Heisenberg's life basically follows what a lot of people see as a redemption arc. In 1946, he's appointed director of the Max Planck Institute for Physics, and he dedicates himself to rebuilding West Germany's scientific infrastructure. Then, in 1957, as part of a group called the Göttingen 18, he actively and publicly opposes West Germany acquiring any tactical nuclear weapons. He spends his later years lecturing, trying to synthesize science and spirituality, like in his 1958 book Physics and Philosophy, until he eventually passes away in Munich in 1976. But bringing it all back home, what does his life's work actually mean for us right now? Well, to ground his abstract physics in our everyday reality, just look at these technologies. Semiconductors, MRIs, lasers, quantum computing. Literally every single one of these technological miracles exists directly downstream from the matrix mechanics equations that a 23-year-old Heisenberg scribbled down on a desolate rock in 1925. Without him, the modern digital age as we know it simply wouldn't exist. That is his undeniable scientific legacy. Yet even with all those breakthroughs, we're left with this haunting paradox. If the universe is fundamentally inherently unpredictable, what happens when a brilliant scientist tries to perfectly control his own legacy while working inside a totalitarian regime? Heisenberg, the guy who literally freed science from determinism, could not outmaneuver the moral gravitational pull of a fascist state. He tried to micromanage his political survival the exact same way a classical physicist tries to pinpoint an electron. And the harder he tried to secure his position, the more his moral standing blurred into total uncertainty. So I want to wrap up this explainer with a final, provocative thought for you. When creating technologies that can fundamentally alter the world, at what point does intellectual neutrality cross the line into moral complicity? We're living in an age of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and massive tech shifts. Heisenberg's life stands as a profound historical warning for innovators today. You simply cannot separate the science from its impact on humanity. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the complex world of Werner Heisenberg. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.